Good morning, my dear friends. How are you all? I hope you are doing well. So, today I have brought chapter 5 Coal and Petroleum, part 1, Science Class 8. So, let's begin. I hope you will enjoy. So, let's begin, my dear students. Chapter 5 Coal and Petroleum. I hope you will enjoy this chapter. Now, these two words, coal and petroleum, are not new to us. Coal, that whenever I say coal, you imagine a black substance, and petroleum, that is something related to crude oil, that could be petrol, kerosene, or diesel. So, these words are very familiar in day to day life, but let's talk how they are formed, how they are processed, how much time they take to produce, and are they renewable sources or non-renewable sources. Suppose renewable sources, that means they can be regenerated again and again, but non-renewable sources, once they are used up by us or by anybody, they cannot be regenerated. So here we begin our chapter 5. Now, we use various materials for our basic needs. Some of them are found in nature and some have made by the human efforts. Since all these are obtained from the nature, they are called the natural resources. So, important definition from the first introduction is what you mean by natural resources. So, the resource which are obtained from the nature, or the resources which are not made by the humans are called the natural resources. Now, this is the activity. This is given in the textbook as well. Make a list of various material used by us in our daily life and classify them as a natural and the man-made. Now, natural, water, that is a natural substance, correct? Air, which is the natural substance, soil, natural substance, but your toothbrush or a bucket or your raincoat, or you can say your bags, they are the man-made or the synthetic substances. So this way the list is endless. We can classify all the surrounding objects in the natural and the man-made substances. Now, classification of resources. Can air, water and soil be exhausted by the human activities? No. We cannot exhaust all air, water and the soil. So you have already studied about the water. Is water a limitless source resources? Yes. We have studied about the water cycle in the past, that whatever water we are using, or that has been used by us, that is replenished or that come back to us in the form of rain, and that is recharge or it stay underground as the groundwater, or the that is the storage water that we are using for the further uses. So we can say that the water, air and soil, they are limitless sources to us. In the light of the availability of various resources in the nature, natural resources can be broadly classified into major two types. One is the inexhaustible resources. These resources are present unlimited quantity in the nature and they are not likely to be exhausted by the human activity. For example, sunlight and air. Let me give you one more fact about the sunlight. The sunlight that we receive in 8 minutes is enough for millions of years to survive. So you can imagine the abundant source of sunlight and air which is available to us. So they are inexhaustible natural resources. That means they cannot get exhausted with the human activities. Exhaustible natural resources. The amount of these resources in the nature is limited. They can be exhausted by the human activities. For example, of these resources are forest. Suppose we cut down the forest or we do the deforestation, then this natural resource can be exhausted. Wildlife, all the animals, they are reserved because they are also important for our ecosystem and to maintain the food chains. Minerals. Now here the meaning of mineral is naturally available elements like silver, gold and the platinum and some other important minerals: coal, petroleum, and the natural gas. Now, this all are the natural sources, but they are exhaustible. That means if we overuse them or if we don't use them wisely, they can be exhaust. Now let's have the another activity which is also the part of our textbook. This activity you have to perform in the group. Take some containers, fill them with the popcorns, peanuts, and the coated grams and the toffees. Now divide the students into the group of 7 of each. Further, divide each group in the 3 subgroup containing 1, 2, 3 students. Label them as the first, second and the third generation respectively. This subgroup represent the consumers. As the population is growing, second and the third generation have the larger numbers of consumers. Put one full container of each group on the table. Now this activity is very interesting. You can perform at your home. Now if one person like only popcorn, they will consume all the popcorns. If the other group is more interested for the toffees, they will exhaust all the toffees. So I hope you have understood the meaning behind this activity. Now ask consumer of the first generation from each group to consume eatables from the container of their group. Now ask the second generation consumers from each group to do the same. Ask students to observe carefully the availability of eatables in each containers. If something is left in the container, ask the third generation from each group to consume it. Now finally observe whether all the consumer of third generation got the eatables or not. Might be certain toffees would not reach to the third generation. Also observe if anything is still left in any of the containers. It could be peanuts might not be available to one group and might be available in more numbers to the other group. So you can see the uneven distribution of the items among the group. Now let's observe what exactly happened after the group activity. Assume that the eatables in the consumers represent the total availability of exhaustible natural resources like coal, petroleum or the natural gas. Each group may have different consumption pattern. Are the earlier generation of any group too greedy? Because they might see more toffees, so they might have picked up more toffees as the first generation. Second generation might have seen the less toffees, so they might have taken the less numbers of the toffees. But the third generation, which was in the larger population, could barely find the toffees for themselves. So they could, the one who got that toffee got that opportunity, and the rest could not have that toffee. The similar thing happens with us because the crude oil and the prices are so high because of the availability nowadays is very less, because our previous generations were so greedy that they have exhausted most of the available crude oil and the coal or the natural resources. So we can think like that our coming generation might not get the enough of the resources which they are supposed to get for their survival. Now this were formed from the dead remains of the living organism. Now all these natural resources took millions of years to form, and they are formed through the fossils, the dead organisms, the remains of the dead organisms that were covered over the one on the another, and after the million of years procedure they have turned into the coal and the petroleum. So these are all known as the fossil fuel. This is the one of the most important definition generally asked. What do you mean by the fossil fuels? Now let's talk about the very important fossil fuel, that's the coal. It is also called the black gold because of its importance. You may have seen the coal or even heard about it. It is as hard as stone and it is black in the color. Coal is one of the fuel used to cook in an earlier time. Earlier it was used in the railway engines, or you might have seen the goods train. to produce the steam to run the engines. It also used in the thermal power plant to produce the electricity. Coal is also used as a fuel in the various industries. But let me tell you, coal is nowadays replaced by so many other available resources, because if coal is not completely burnt, it may leave harmful or poisonous gases or the ashes residue, which may lead to the respiratory diseases. So nowadays coal is been highly replaced with the other cleaner fuels. Now, what is the major story of the coal? About 3 million years ago, the earth had dense forest in the low-lying wetlands area. Due to the natural processes like the flood, this forest got buried under the soil. As more soil deposit over them, they were compressed and the temperature also rose as they sank deeper and deeper. Under the high pressure and the high temperature, dead plants got slowly converted into the coals. As coal contain mainly carbon, the slow process of conversion of dead vegetation into the coal is called the carbonization. Another important definition is carbonization. Since it was formed from the remains of vegetation or the dead plants, coal is also called the fossil fuels. So this is how coal was formed, and nowadays it is available to us. So just imagine, it take 300 million years to produce and to get formed, and we are using in the microseconds of the time, we are using this most precious natural resources. Now let's talk about the story of the coal in the further detail. When heated in the air, coal burns and produces mainly carbon dioxide, which is CO2 gas. Coal is processed in the industry to get some useful product such as coke, coal tar and the coal gas. Now, which are the main components of the coal? The first component is coke. C-O-K-E, coke. It is tough, porous and the black substance. It is almost pure form of carbon. Coke is used in the manufacturing of steel and in the extraction of many other metals. So in examination they can ask, write a note, what is the function and the importance of the coke. Now, second important component of coal is coal tar. When heated in the air, coal burns and produces mainly carbon dioxide gas. Coal is processed in the industry to get some useful products such as coke, coal tar and the coal gas. About 200 substances are produced from the coal. Tar are used as the used as a starting materials for the manufacturing of various substances used in a everyday life. So we can say that the components of coal are used as the raw material for the manufacturing of the other important substances. Now, the coal tar, you can see in the figure, how does it look? In industry, it is used for making synthetic dyes. Dyes, that means coloring agent. Drugs, here drug means medicines. Explosives like crackers, perfumes, plastics, paints, photographic materials like photographic films, then roofing materials, etc. Interestingly, the naphthalene balls used to repel the moths and other insects are also obtained from the coal tar. You might have seen those white balls which mama keeps near the basin or the sink or in your woolen clothes to keep the insect and the moth away. These days, bitumen, a petroleum product, is used in place of coal tar for metalling the roads. So during the road formation, you might have seen certain black color coat which has been rolled over the roads which are been prepared by the government. They are using an important substance which is called the bitumen, that is also obtained from the coal. Coal gas. A coal gas is obtained during the processing of the coal to get the coke. So when you are making coke from the coal, you get the coal gas. It is used as a fuel in many industries situated near the coal processing plants. These days, the bitumen, a petroleum product. So, coal gas was used for street lighting for first time in the London in 18th century, which is 1810, and in the New York around 1820. Nowadays, it is used as the source of heat rather than the light. Now, let's talk about the petroleum. Now, petroleum in detail we will talk in our next part. So, this part we had discussed about the coal, how the coal was processed, what is the history behind the coal, and what are its main components. So, we will talk about the second component of the nature resources, which is very important, that is the petroleum, in our next part, part 2. I hope you have understood the part 1 and enjoyed it. See you for the next part 2.